Sorry. Sorry. Good evening. Boa noite. Kuzuzangpo and good evening. The sun has literally set behind the mountains. The moon is about to rise, but you're all here for the last episode of a big act. Thank you so much indeed for your patience and for your kindness. I've come a long way from Bhutan across the 7 seas, looking for my fellow pilgrims in search of happiness. And I've found you in your multitude. Thank you so much. I would like to begin with a little personal story. It's about 3 years ago that I was asked to be a member of the international jury looking at cities around the world. And when it came to Curitiba, it was without a doubt right on top. Congratulations, Curitiba. And to be able to come and see that city in person after having read a lot of documents and having viewed many images, it was such joy. The reality of Curitiba far exceeds the impressions that I collected from reading those reports and viewing those images. Thanks to my hosts, I was even able to have a helicopter ride this afternoon to really view this grand, beautiful city of yours. Congratulations, Curitiba. Bhutan, my country, right up in the Himalayas, is supposed to be the birthplace of this unique development vision that we call gross national happiness. But coming here to Curitiba, I see that this is a city that can be named Felicidade, happy city. And I will try and make my humble submissions. You must be tired at the end of this long day following yet another long day yesterday. However, you fill this hall with your physical presence, but more importantly, you fill this hall with your blessings, with your deep yearning for something that speaks to the core of your being. You are not just here, but you are here as pilgrims in search of something that, in the language of this great American poetess, Emily Dickinson, stills the tooth that nibbles at the heart. Looking for something that stills the tooth that nibbles at the heart. Over the past many centuries of our development, We have seen progress, we have seen development, we have seen the world change so rapidly and so dramatically. Yet, we are still searching that last, perhaps, source that provides to us that healing, that material wealth, physical commodities do not meet. I'm fond of this metaphor of the North Star. The North Star. As you know, long ago, when today's precision equipment were not invented, sailors, mariners, on the wide open seas looked at the North Star to find their direction to the safety of the port, because the North Star was always there as a constant point of reference. So, looking at the North Star, the mariners, the sailors, lost on the wide, wide open seas, looked at the North Star and found their direction to the safety of the port. Today, in the 21st century, we have very smart equipment, state-of-the-art technology. We may not look at the North Star. In the 21st century, many of us may neither have the time nor the inclination to look at the North Star, because everything is available. Precise points in the sea, on land, and in the sky are available on your mobile phones. However, even in the 21st century, in fact, more so now than ever before in human history, you and I continue being in need of the North Star. Just as all men, women, and children need to have a dream, need to have a goal, a destination in the life, so also every nation, every society ought to have its own North Star. Without a North Star, they will have no idea as to where they will be 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, 15, 20, 50, 100 years down the line. They will not know how to do the planning, how to mobilize the resources, and which direction to head as the society moves forward. See? That's why today, you and I, our societies, our nations, need a North Star to guide us in the direction in which we want to go. Just as the North Star years ago guided the ancient mariners to the safety of the port. The North Star for nations, as the dreams for individuals. For Bhutan, my country, the North Star was identified by His Majesty the Fourth King, Gyalpo Jigme Singh Wangchuk. His picture you can see on the left. His Majesty was very young 16 going on 17, when almost overnight he had to assume the responsibility of looking after the kingdom on the sudden demise of his great father, the third king, Dugyalpom Jigmedorji Wangchuk. However, the young king was young in body, but has been very wise and mature and far-sighted in his visions. As a young king, looking after a country which was far less developed then than it is now, looked around to see as to how governments around the world took the country forward, moved their societies forward. He wanted to see what it was that governments meant by development. What was progress? What was the goal of development? Why development? Why progress? What is the goal of life? Our young king asked these fundamental questions as he started putting the house in order. Still mourning the sudden demise of his most illustrious father. See, he looked around the world and saw that countries and governments around the world measured progress by using the yardstick called gross domestic product, GDP. See, GDP, the way to measure progress, development, how developed, how advanced the country was assessed by using this highly limited, highly reductionistic, narrow, unidimensional measure called gross domestic product. As a young king, His Majesty felt that GDP as a measure of progress did not tell the whole story. It told only a part of the story of development. It told only a partial story about progress. And in order for us to get a holistic picture of progress, holistic vision of development, we need to look at not only GDP or material, physical quantities. Because life is more than commodities. Life is more than economics. Life is more than materials. But if we limit the vision of progress only to what can be measured by using GDP, we are going to get a highly limited and narrow view of development. It doesn't tell the story of life as it is, holistic, complex as it is. Life is various. Life is complex. It is subtle. It is beautiful. So is the society. Society is complex. It is multi-layered. It is multidimensional. And to use one yardstick to look at the health of the society, the state of the society would be highly limited, highly unreliable, unrealistic. That is why our young king thought that for Bhutan, it was important to look at a much more broad-based, a much more holistic view of development that took into account not only economic or material quantities, but that took into account non-material, non-economic, non-physical elements which actually give meaning and worth and fulfillment to life. Our emotional needs, our psychological needs, our social needs, spiritual needs, ethical needs, needs for friendship, our need for love and understanding and fellowship and understanding, see, harmony, see, team spirit, our kindness, generosity, the capacity to love and to reach out, the capacity to volunteer, to make a difference. In GDP, these non-material dimensions don't count. But imagine life without love, without emotions, without sentiments, without friendship, without music. You could see this morning and yesterday, this hall buzzing with music. Music echoing and re-echoing and re-echoing till the last bend of the road, see. Music. And you're all jumping and dancing and clapping and tapping your feet on the floor. I didn't understand the language of that music, but I understood music. So I was tapping my feet as well on the floor and clapping my hands to the beat of the music. Imagine life without music. Imagine life without family, without friendship, without love, without generosity, without kindness, without fellowship, without human solidarity. In life, these count. In GDP, they may not count, but in life, they count. They make life worthwhile. When we are sad, we need somebody's shoulder to lean on. When we are happy, we need company to celebrate our joy, to celebrate moments of delight. These are important. We have a deep, deep spiritual dimension, deep emotional dimension, psychological dimension, social dimension. These are important. GDP does not count these as important. In fact, as the former Senator of the United States, Bob Kennedy, said, GDP does not measure what is worthwhile. It measures everything except that which makes life worthwhile. See? So GDP has its limits. That is why our young king realized that a society purely based on GDP, a society that counts progress only on the strength of GDP, will have a lot to account for. See? That's why His Majesty introduced this very important holistic new paradigm or a vision that he called gross national happiness. Gross national happiness. At that point in time, in the early 80s, when His Majesty introduced this idea, many people felt that it was such a beautiful, pious idea, but it is too idealistic, too philosophical, and may not work in reality. Today, some 40 years down the line, some 45 years down the line, the world is coming around. The world is coming around. And understanding that there are limits to growth, limits to development, limits to progress. We have to assess, re-examine what we mean by progress and development. And many countries believe that Bhutan's new vision of measuring or assessing development is worth looking at. As a matter of fact, Brazil was the first country after Bhutan to hold the big international conference on gross national happiness in 2008. And the government of Brazil then went to the extent of changing a provision in the constitution to incorporate ideas of happiness as a basic human right. And I see in Brazil, particularly in Curitiba, you have so many efforts, commendable efforts, to look at life differently. That's why in the quality of life survey, you do so well. There are so many clubs, institutions, individuals, deeply, deeply committed to looking at life differently, looking at progress differently. So in Bhutan, His Majesty, in fact, articulated this new vision of development called gross national happiness. And His Majesty articulated this very important point that gross national happiness is more important than gross domestic product. And to this day, Bhutan actually takes gross national happiness not only as a policy or a philosophy, but as an instrument of national planning. So we have what is called the Gross National Happiness Commission. Early on it was called the National Planning Commission. Now it is called the Gross National Happiness Commission. It does the same work, as a matter of fact, making policies, mobilizing resources, allocation of resources, and monitoring progress by the departments and ministries based on GNH compatible instruments. So, if a ministry or a government department submits a program for resources for the budget to the Gross National Happiness Commission, the Commission looks at the projects, the programs submitted by the ministries and the departments to see as to whether these projects are compatible with the ideas of gross national happiness. If they are not compatible, they do not receive state funding. So they have to revise the submissions and make them GNH compatible and submit them to the commission again to receive state funding. So today we have actually been following this model of gross national happiness, not only as a policy, but as an instrument of management and administration and monitoring. As a matter of fact, our present king, His Majesty defines gross national happiness as development with values. Development with values. We see development all over, activities in the name of development all over, but what do they support? Do they support respect for our planet Earth? Does development happen at the cost of the health of the environment, at the cost of people, at the cost of flora and fauna? Or does development happen development with values? If a certain project takes place, does this project result in bringing about betterment of life? Can people's life become any better, more comfortable, more secure? Do our cities look greener and healthier? Is development equitable? Is it fair? Are the resources equitably distributed amongst the people? Are the development opportunities equitably shared amongst the populace? Does one part of the country develop at the same pace or nearly at the same pace as other parts of the country? Does the quality of life improve? Does the society become more peaceful, more harmonious? Are the people more trustworthy, more friendly, more helpful? What does development do? Or is it only for making money, see? Is it only for making progress on the GDP side, see? Increasing revenue, see? Excuse me. Increasing revenue regardless of what that activity does, that project does. That's why development with values. So in any country, if there's any department of the ministry, both in the private sector or the public sector, carrying out development works or activities in the name of development, we have to see what is the end goal of the development, what is the purpose of the development. Development has got to be means to an end, and the end ought to be good life. The end ought to be good society. See? So development with values. In Bhutan, gross national happiness, or the architecture of gross national happiness, is based on four pillars. We call them pillars. The architecture of gross national happiness is founded on four pillars. The first pillar is called bringing about equitable and balanced socio-economic development. Equitable and balanced socio-economic development. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. You're so very kind. Thank you so much. Thank you. The first pillar, bringing about equitable and balanced socio-economic development. Because around the world we see that a lot of unhappiness comes about because of inequity, imbalance in the societies. A small section of the people taking the lion's share of the country's wealth, and the vast majority left with the crumbs to fend for themselves. Opportunities are not equally divided. So unhappiness arises because of inequities. So a very important factor for GNH, gross national happiness, is this equity, balance in social and economic opportunities. The second important factor is conservation of our natural environment. Conservation of our natural environment. Our environment is so important. The natural environment. And Brazil, thank you so much for the Amazons. Thank on behalf of the world. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you so much for the gift, for the blessing that is the Amazon rainforest. 60% of the world's rainforest is in your country. Please keep it, not only for generations of Brazilians till the end of time, but keep it for humanity, keep it for the world. The stakes are so very high. Today we are talking about global warming, climate change, mass migrations, desertification, rising of sea levels, melting of the snow on our mountain tops, unseasonal rains, unseasonal droughts. The old pattern in seasons is getting mixed up. We do not have the certainty of those seasons anymore, see. All at the end of the day related to human actions, resulting from human actions. So our fourth king realized, even when he was a very young king, that we have to take care of our natural environment. Mother Nature, imagine Mother Nature, so very gracious, so very kind, so generous, so merciful. We walk on Mother Nature. never ever asking for permission to walk on her surface. We have taken it for granted that we can walk on Mother Nature's bodies. We breathe this precious air, precious air. We never bought it. We never made it. Mother Nature gave it. But we take liberties with this precious air, pollute it, make it unbreathable. Same with water. This water of life, this precious, precious water of life, we pollute it in the sea. We pollute it in the streams. We pollute it in the rivers. Make our water undrinkable by humans as well as by animals and by the birds and the reptiles. We humans do it. That's why His Majesty the King was very, very sure about what would happen 15, 20, 30 years down the line. At that point in time, there were no environmental pundits or experts. But the young king knew that a time would come when human action would result in such damage to the sanctity and the integrity and the well-being of Mother Nature. And today what we see is in a way the fulfillment of that fear of Bhutan's young kings. So environment is such an important part of our well-being. The constitution of the Kingdom of Bhutan stipulates that 60% of the country must remain under forest cover for all times to come. And we have committed ourselves to be carbon neutral in perpetuity. Today, the country has about 72% of the country under forest cover. We can never take it for granted. We have to consciously work hard at it. The third very important pillar is our culture. Culture is very important for Bhutan, as indeed for all countries. We saw some wonderful manifestations of Brazilian culture. This part of the world, Latin America, is the home. Excuse me. This part of the world is home to some of the most ancient cultural traditions, civilizations, the great march of the human mind, the great awakenings of the human mind happened here. See. The original, authentic values. Without those, we become rootless. We have no identity. See. That's why culture is so important. Culture is the way we are. Culture is the way we articulate who we are, see, by our speech, by our dress, by our language and literature, by art and architecture, by sports and games, music and dance, food and drink, the way we conduct our rituals, our celebrations, our ceremonies, the way we build our homes, respect our elders, treat each other, speak with each other, celebrate diversity, plurality. Culture is the way we are. It's the way we articulate who we are. That's so very important. Without culture, we become rootless. The last important element is governance. Governance is a very important part of gross national happiness. Governance can be the root of unhappiness in countries. If governance is weak or poor or corrupt, it can bring about unhappiness. That is why His Majesty the Fourth King said, governance ought to be an instrument of public service. It ought to be an instrument of public service. His Majesty would say, if at the end of our 5-year plans, our people are no happier than they were before, you have to know that your plans have failed, see. So government's actions can be judged by how happy or sad or poor or well-off, people become over time. So these 4 pillars are very important. Bringing about balanced and equitable socio-economic development, conservation of our natural environment, preservation and promotion of our ancient culture and heritage, and promotion of good governance. These are important not only for Bhutan, but for countries all around the world. Of course, nation building is an intergenerational process. Every generation would have to do their part in nation building. If a nation has a big vision, succeeding generations of that nation have to take ownership of that vision. So the Ministry of Education is an extremely important subsystem within the larger national system. Because in the education system, we have all the future leaders in the public sector as well as the private sector. Our future leaders, our administrators, our presidents, prime ministers, ministers, policymakers, planners, diplomats, bureaucrats, people in the industries, businesses, in the professions, all our future leaders are in our schools, colleges, and universities. That's why we have to take the future generation along with us, the younger generation along. To this end, Bhutan's Ministry of Education introduced a program called Educating for Gross National Happiness in 2009. And some of the experts from Brazil also helped us in that effort. And we have we had a program called Educating for Gross National Happiness. And the strategy to implement the program was called Building Green Schools. Green Schools. And there is a mandala of my green school. And my green school has 8 elements. Excuse me. These 8 elements are like the 8 levels of consciousness. Today we have education all over the world. We have built schools and colleges and universities and collected the most precious segment of the population in those institutions for long, long periods of time. Our children, our young men and women. When we keep such precious people, our boys and girls, young men and women, our children, in our institutions of learning for such a long period of time, our institutions must have a bigger purpose than simply preparing them for careers or to find a job, as important as they are. They have to build their lives, become better human beings, build a better society, build a better world. That's why this program called Educating for Gross National Happiness, through the instrument of green schools, has been very important for us. Green is a color, but for me and for us, green is a metaphor. Green is a metaphor for anything and everything that supports and sustains life in its multiple variety. Human life, animal life, bird life, plant life, life in the sea, life on land, life in the air, and life everywhere in between. So anything that supports life in its multiple variety is green. So we can have a green school, we can have a green home, we can have a green parliament, we can have green laws, green economy, green politics, green diplomacy, green business, green industries, green minds, green hearts, everything that is supportive of life. So we have green schools. And my green schools have 8 elements. They're there, so the first element of my green school is again, today, most of our education responds only to the call of the mind. See? It responds only to the claim to the head or the mind. But human life is more than the mind. We are more than the mind. We are more than the intellect. In the first place, our education system must take care of the preservation of the integrity of our planet Earth. The relationship between us, the human beings, and planet Earth. That is my first level of consciousness, natural greenery. natural greenery, social greenery, cultural, intellectual greenery, academic greenery, aesthetic greenery, spiritual greenery, and above all, ethical greenery. All these will take a very long time to explain, so I will not explain them here, but I've given very brief definitions of what I mean by each of these. What I feel is that it's important for our education system to recognize the multiple claims of those elements that make our society, that make our life. Our society, our education system, our educational practitioners would have to understand deeply, deeply, appreciate the relationship between us, the human beings, and our planet Earth. That is the first principle of education for me. This appreciation of this mutual support between us, the human beings, and planet Earth. If we take care of planet Earth will take care of us. So generation after generation, we will be able to survive and also flourish. Society is a very important claimant on our universities, on our colleges, on our schools, on our education system. We have to talk about the society. We have to talk about the values of the society. The social greenery means this: making our young men and women learn values of positive energy, building friendship, becoming problem solvers, becoming bridge builders. So when in schools, colleges, and universities, our young people have learned to live together, to build bridges, to build friendship, to build trust and understanding and harmony. When they go out of our colleges and schools and universities, they will become bridge builders. They'll become problem solvers. They'll become good leaders. So that's why social greenery is so important. Do our colleges and universities create that environment for young people to learn those important skills? Culture I talked about is so very important. Succeeding generations would have to know their cultural roots. How did we come to be the way we are? See? Where are we going? See? What are our roots? What are those great mind ideas, foundations of our culture? See? Those are important. Intellectual greenery, the great ideas of the sciences, humanities, philosophy, music. Those great ideas that have moved humanity, that have moved nations, the great ideas of the world. These are important to appreciate. They may sound very abstract, but these are important. What is the purpose of education otherwise? Some, an academic greenery. Academic greenery refers to those different disciplines, fields of investigation. We have to know the nature of those disciplines. What is physics for? Why do we teach physics year after year? What is physics as opposed to mathematics? What is the language? How is language different from literature? What makes mathematics mathematical? What makes physics physics? What makes history history and our geography? Our teachers, our school system should understand this. So academic greenery has got to do with the nature of the disciplines. And of course, aesthetic greenery. Aesthetics is the study of beauty and grace and tastefulness. Today, our young people are drugged by negative influences of mass media. They do not understand that their soul is getting sucked by negative influences of mass media. They have to be builders and creators. They have the capacity to imagine, to create, to make. But when they depend so much upon mass media, they lose their sense of creativity. They lose their identity. They lose their sanctity as human beings. So, creating that opportunity for young people to learn these finer elements of life, to extend the range of their life is so important. Spiritual greenery is important because spirituality has got nothing to do with religion. Religiosity or religion sometimes binds us. Spirituality liberates us. Spirituality is the tendency of our mind to look for models, for icons, great ideas. It could be our teachers, our parents, our leaders, who we look up to as our models. As we are not perfect. As we are not complete. As we are not full. But our desire is to be fuller, to be more perfect, to be more complete. Spiritual greenery is that desire in us to be fuller, more perfect, and more complete. So, and indeed, moral or ethical greenery has got to do with our ability to make distinctions between categories of values. What are these values? Our values. Only human beings can make these distinctions. Right from wrong, good from bad, truth from falsehood, or untruth. Human beings are able to make that distinction. And if we want our leaders to be honest and truthful and upright, have strength of character, they have to learn. They have learned to be honest. They have to be ethical, morally upright. So my Green School has these 8 elements. And today, this little book, My Green School in our outline, has been translated into about 18 different major languages around the world. And in maybe some months, we may also have a Portuguese edition of My Green School for the Brazilian readers and schools. So anyway, I think this about green schools. My Green School comes from this big national vision of gross national happiness. If a nation has a big vision, such as gross national happiness, the subsystems of that nation would have to embrace and advance that vision. That's why the education minister had to do this. Education ministry had to do this, because all the future leaders are there, see. So the education system must be befitting the vision of the country, see. Hence, educating for gross national happiness through building green schools. I have to say that many people might believe that Bhutan is the birthplace of gross national happiness, and everybody in Bhutan must be absolutely happy. That is not true. We are also human beings like everybody else in the world. We are born, we grow old, we die. We have flesh and blood. We have our weaknesses, our frailties, our vulnerabilities. But we believe that our nation must have a goal. Our nation must have a North Star. Our nation must have a big vision. We may get to that destination in 1 generation, or in 2 generations, or in the long, long future. See, we must have a North Star, just as we must have a dream. See, so this is Bhutan's vision, and I'm so happy that all of you are in pursuit of happiness. Your country is in pursuit of happiness. People around the world, regardless of time and space, are in pursuit of happiness. So to all of you, once again, I would like to say what great joy and privilege it's been for me to travel all the way from Bhutan and to meet you as fellow pilgrims in search of happiness. Could I invite my brother Gustavo? So I would like to say that this world is far from perfect. My own country is far from perfect. No country in the world is perfect. This world is not a perfect place. But with all its imperfections, it is still a good world. It is still a good world. Every bit worth working for. Every bit worth improving. This life is not perfect, but with all its aches and pains, with all the agony and suffering, this life is still beautiful. It is still precious. It is still worth celebrating, worth honoring, and worth preserving. So to all of you, once again, I would like to say what a great delight has been for me to honor the invitation extended to me by my brother, Dr. Gustavo, to come here. He's been doing with his team a tremendous job to make this world a better place. And all of you have been a part of this wonderful, great effort. Please continue the endeavor. We are in it together. I would like to offer this scarf. We offer it in Bhutan. This scarf it has in it the 8 lucky signs of Bhutan. 8 lucky signs of Bhutan. And when we wish people, when we wish our friends, elders, anybody who we wish for peace, for progress, for prosperity and fulfillment, we offer this. So to you and to all of you, Dr. Gustavo. Sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I would also like to say, I would also like to ask, I would also like to know what you feel about the last 2 days. The organizers would have had a big vision for the 2 days. Congress International Happiness Summit. The summit has come to an end. But what I feel is that between yesterday and today, in the last 2 days, the world has become different. The world is no longer the same. Between November the 5th and November the 6th, the world is no longer the same. It has become happier by so many people in this hall becoming happy. See? The world has become nobler. The world has become nobler by the nobility of your presence here and the nobility of your hearts and your minds. You have made the world different and better. In the last 2 days, the world has become that much more beautiful, that much more loving, and that much more happy. When you go home, take this world with you. Take this happiness with you. Take this joy and this blessing of this Congress with you. And to all of you, and to your near and dear ones, to your fellow citizens, and to the world, I wish much happiness and joy and fulfillment. Thank you. Obrigado. Yes,